Hello everyone, and welcome to not the Toyota Crown, but the Lexus GS again. And we start here because I do have a point to make. I promise I will get to the Crown in a bit, but I want to begin with the GS because for the longest time, this and the Toyota Crown were siblings. First of all, they were siblings mechanically because they both shared a very similar dedicated luxury rear drive platform. But more significantly, they were siblings in terms of their importance to Toyota. You see, the Toyota Crown is one of Toyota's longest running nameplates, and it eventually became a symbol for Japan's engineering excellence. The 4th Gen GS was also rather important for Toyota because it was their way of restoring passion to the Lexus brand, aside from the Elevate of course, because this was one of the first Lexus models to receive a heads-up display. It was also the first Lexus model to receive rear-wheel steer. So you can tell that Toyota, they took extra care in making these cars great. But the new generation of Crown isn't quite the same. I'm not sure how to explain it. How about I just show you? Hello everyone, and welcome to our very first episode filmed in Japan. And to the new heir to the throne, the S230 Toyota Crown Sedan. And already something is amiss, because depending on where you live in the world, you may be thinking, that's not a Toyota Crown. And you would be right. You may know this Crown, which is a lifted sedan crossover thing that replaces the Avalon. Or you may know this Crown, which is supposedly a sporty CUV kind of thing. Or you may know this Crown, which is a wagon crossover type of vehicle that replaces the Venza. The point is that Toyota's strategy with this generation of Crown is to globalize the lineup instead of making them exclusive for a few Asian markets. And they do that by sort of making Crown its own sub-brand. Heck, even here in Japan, there are actual Crown dealerships that only sell models of the Toyota Crown. Semantically though, I do think it's kind of weird to have 4 different cars all called Crown, because supposedly a king or queen should be the one and only, the highest, the greatest, a superlative. But from a marketing and engineering standpoint, I am a little more worried that Toyota has diluted the Crown name somewhat in pursuit of global appeal by changing its design philosophy. Because, well, aside from the Century, the Crown has always been Toyota's flagship and beacon of innovation. After World War II, Japan's automotive industry was in shambles. Manufacturers were struggling to get themselves back on their feet and were quickly being left behind by their Western counterparts. In an effort to catch up, local automakers formed partnerships with Western manufacturers to build their cars in Japan from knockdown kits. Toyota, however, was convinced that, though it would be difficult, developing its own cars and technologies in-house would allow it to gain a head start over its competitors. And in 1955, a decade after World War II ended, the Toyopet Crown was revealed to the world as the first passenger car to be built and developed entirely in Japan. It was a rear-drive sedan with a 1.5-liter 4-cylinder, a 3-speed manual, 6 seats, and rear suicide doors. Designed to cope with the then harsh road conditions of Japan, it prioritized ride comfort as well as durability. And it was a huge success with both the general public and various government agencies. To drive or be driven in a Crown spoke volumes about your faith in the country's engineering. Succeeding generations of the Crown introduced various body styles like coupes, wagons, and even trucks, all built on a version of the same platform. Along the way, the Crown debuted several firsts for Toyota, Japan, and even the world.
The second-gen Crown was the first Japanese car with an automatic transmission, the 2-speed Toyo Glide, and to be equipped with a V8, which was its own model called the Crown 8. The third-gen Crown was the first Japanese car to use a perimeter frame chassis, which drastically reduced NVH. First car with a CD-ROM-based navigation system, the 9th-gen Crown. First Japanese car with VSC, the 10th-gen Crown. First mild hybrid Toyota, the 11th-gen Crown. First car with a pedestrian detection night vision system, the 13th-gen Crown. First Toyota with active noise cancellation technology, the 13th-gen Crown as well. The Crown even received features that equivalent Lexus models like the GS never got, like oscillating air vents, soft closed doors, and even air suspension.
This generation of Crown, however, is quite different. Firstly, it doesn't come with any real innovations apart from Toyota's Hybrid Max system, which is actually pretty cool because it combines a traditional 6-speed auto with a parallel hybrid system. And that should be a lot more fun than the eCVT-based systems of every other Toyota hybrid out there. But then again, you can't even get it in this car. You can only get that system in the Crown Crossover, which is only one of 4 variants of the Toyota Crown. And that leads me on to my second point. For the first time ever, 3 of the 4 variants of the Crown are now based on the front-wheel drive transverse platform TNGA-K that's shared with many other front-drive Toyotas like the RAV4. And that feels a bit cheap to me.
Thankfully, this sedan version of the Crown, which is what we have for review today, retains the more premium rear-wheel drive TNGA-L platform shared with the Lexus LS and LC, a true descendant of Crowns of old. This Z-grade model, which by the way is the only trim level apart from some special editions, gets a long list of standard features like adaptive suspension, a full-color hood, reclining and massaging rear seats, rear door sunshades, and so much more for the equivalent of $45,000 in Japan. About the same as a fully loaded ES-300H. However, it doesn't get any twin-turbo V6 or naturally aspirated V8 under the hood like its Lexus counterparts, though it does share the 10-speed multi-stage hybrid transmission with the LC and LS 500H. Instead, you either get the A25A FXS, Toyota's run-of-the-mill hybridized 2.5-liter inline-4, making around 250 horsepower combined, or a fuel cell EV variant similar to the current Toyota Mirai that makes around 180 horsepower.
Okay, so the powertrains don't sound that impressive, but I have to say, I do really like the look of this car. I think it is one of the best looking sedans, period. Just take a look at the side profile of this thing. The long wheelbase, the low hood, the long dash to axle, and the low slung cabin that's swept back towards the rear wheels. It looks really, really expensive. I also love the horizontal and vertical line motifs that appear throughout the design, in the side creases, in the door shut lines, even in the wheels and the grille. It reminds me of old boxy luxury cars without the actual profile itself being boxy or bulky. The profile of this looks really sleek actually. And I especially love this design in dark colors like this precious black pearl, because when combined with all of the chrome and satin accents everywhere, I think it looks rather elegant and dignified. If you want to stand out a bit more, Toyota makes this thing called a black package, which changes all of the chrome and satin bits to gloss black, and also changes the wheels to be gloss black with a spiral sort of design. And it looks really cool, almost like a concept car. So the exterior design is an absolute win. But does the interior live up? No.
Soft close.
Okay, so first thing, this interior isn't actually that easy to get into because of the sloping roofline and the low slung cabin. But once you are inside, you are greeted with a clean, modern, and luxurious looking interior. And I do love all of the wood, all of the leather, and all of the bright work around. It makes it look quite premium. And I also really like the ambient lighting implementation here as well, because unlike a lot of luxury cars, you never actually see the bulbs here directly. What you instead see here is a soft, subtle glow that emerges from behind the panels, which is how proper luxury lighting should be done.
The material quality in here is also kind of good at first glance. You have some nice soft touch materials around the place. The wood, the open pore wood feels really nice. You have soft armrests down here, and even where your knees touch, they're also quite nicely padded. The buttons themselves are also really nice to use. They have a lovely smooth and positive action to them. I especially love the window switches. They feel quite nice. However, upon closer inspection, you see the blatant lack of attention to detail in this car because, okay, a lot of modern cars, even like luxury cars, the top half of all the panels have some soft touch on them. This is kind of similar, and the bottom below the dashboard hip line is filled with hard scratchy plastics. Again, this is no different. Seems to be the trend nowadays. But there are a lot of cheap materials that you do touch, even up here, which don't seem to be suitable for a car of this price. So, first example, this surround for the aircon vent, same thing on the other side, that is super scratchy and rough. There's also a lot of scratchy plastics down here next to the charge ports, down here next to your volume knob, which you touch a lot, by the way, and up here also, just above the screen, above your gauge cluster. That feels really hollow and cheap. But perhaps the worst offender is this. Around the gauge cluster screen, you have a layer of gloss black plastic, which looks straight out of an economy car. And actually, I was a bit curious because we rented a Subaru Levorg here to use as a camera car as well. And I was wondering if the interior quality of this didn't really line up with its premium segment, how would it compare to something that is not in the premium segment at all, the Subaru Levorg? Turns out they're pretty darn similar. The Subaru Levorg, just like this, also had a lot of soft touch materials above the dashboard hip line, but below you also have hard scratchy plastics just like this. And it gets worse, because I have identified two distinct points of rattling in this interior. By the way, this car was given to us with 6,000 kilometers on the odometer. So the first rattling point is here. Listen to this. That is hollow plastic that rattles constantly if you ever encounter a road with low amplitude, high frequency bumps, which is quite often in Japan. So you hear a lot of that just buzzing along whenever you drive. Not great. But a more annoying and louder one is somewhere here. My friends and I couldn't pinpoint where it was, but whenever the engine is at 1800 RPM specifically, there is a resonant buzz from some component here, and because of how the car coasts, the engine kind of stays at 1800 RPM whenever you're just cruising along. So you hear two distinct rattles in your supposed luxury car, which really isn't good. At least though, ergonomics are decent. You got a good amount of foot space in the pedal box itself, and again, just like I said earlier, your knees have a nice padded area to rest, and you have a lot of adjustment, electrical by the way, for your steering wheel and your seat. That is good. Storage isn't as good as I was thinking it would be, considering the car is 5 meters long. It's longer than a frickin' Toyota Alphard. So in the door bins, you don't get much space, but at least the area is tall, so you can put like bottles and things like that. In here, you do get a decent center console, which opens both ways, and a decent sized glove box also. But the worst offender is the trunk, because, okay, again, 5 meters long, right? Big luxury sedan. My friends and I came here for 7 days. Well, technically one of them is here for 10, and we had 4 big suitcases because of course we had a lot of clothes and a lot of camera equipment to bring with us. So we were thinking 5 meters should easily fit our bags. But we learned the hard way that the trunk in this car only fits 2 big suitcases. The rest of them we had to stuff inside the cabin in the rear seat. One of them we propped upside down on top of the rear seat, and one of them we sandwiched in between the front and the rear seat itself. That's not very dignified at all. At the very least though, the seat comfort in the front is good. You have a soft and supportive seat even laterally. It's pretty good, and your headrest is also pretty cushy, so that is nice. And you do have a wonderful area, super soft, to rest your hands when you drive. So that's good.
The rear, though, is quite difficult to get in because of, again, that sloping roof line, but at least you do have that handle behind the front seats for easier ingress and egress. The seat comfort itself is also great there. Again, cushy headrests, good support as well, even laterally. You do have some form of recline, similar to the top trim Lexus ES, and that's kind of nice, but it kind of pales in comparison to things like the Toyota Alphard, which offer many more degrees of recline, almost flat, and also offer you a leg rest so you can properly lounge in the back. This one doesn't have it. It's just a bit of recline to allow you to kind of fall asleep better in the back if you're being chauffeured. So that's okay, I suppose. Kind of unique in the segment though, because no other vehicles of this size have that feature as well, except for maybe the Genesis G80. The tech itself in here is actually pretty decent. The screen is large, 12.3 inches, and it is quite intuitive and responsive to your commands.
Up. Let me stop you right there, me. Yes, the screen is good, but the voice command is downright garbage even in Japanese. So now everyone, let's watch my friend Wai Man try to set a destination on the built-in nav.
Ion Mall Kyoto! Ion Mall Kyoto! Ion Mall Kyoto!
Yeah. All I can say is, thank God the screen works well.
The gauge cluster is also all digital, and it's alright. I do wish it had just a bit more configurability, because I would love to see a full map view, just like what Audi's digital cockpit gives you, instead of having two big gauges and one small screen in the middle. I think that would make it even better, but it does have all the information you need, so I think it's totally fine. So that was a lot of information, but if I were to sum it up in one word, I think this interior is mediocre. Yeah, mediocre. Okay, so before we actually set on our journey to see if the Crown can redeem itself on the road, spoiler alert, it doesn't, let's switch over to POV just for a bit to see how this drives from my perspective. Alright guys, first thing, visibility is pretty good. The rear window isn't that large, but the camera systems mean that you don't really need to look out there that much, but the sideways and frontal visibility is excellent. These A-pillars are not that large, B-pillar a little bit large, but you can kind of move yourself forward to see around when checking for oncoming traffic. So it's actually not too bad. So let's get on and just park over there just to see what it's like. First thing, shifter, a little bit weird, very much like the Prius, but you can get used to it within like a couple of minutes. So to drive, it is right and forward toward you, like that. And the doors will auto lock as well. First thing you notice is you have pretty light steering, and the steering ratio is actually pretty good. It is about 2.5 turns lock to lock, and you can easily one-hand it through tight bends, which is nice. Another thing that's nice is when you're going relatively slowly, the 360-degree camera and the forward-facing camera does pop out automatically, which is great sometimes, especially when you're trying to maneuver around tight spaces. You do want extra protection, but if you want to see your map, I can understand why it could get a little bit more annoying. Another nice feature is this thing, hold mode. Very similar to the Alphard I reviewed before, hold mode basically holds the brakes when you're at a stop, which means you can rest your foot and not touch the brakes at all. But annoying thing, it does disable every time you restart the car. So let's park and see how this is to navigate. So very nice braking modulation, really easy, and reverse is to the right and away from you, like this. Again, kind of weird, but you get used to it. So automatically, the reverse camera comes up, quite wide angle and very high quality, and the two side mirrors also fold down. So let's give this a shot. And there we go. Very easy. If you press P, it will automatically turn on the parking brake and unlock the doors. And that is how to drive the Crown. It's actually pretty easy. So let's now go on some faster roads to see if this is worthy of the Crown name. Okay, so the Crown. A pretty interesting car because according to Toyota, they need 3 things done for this car to be a success. First one being, it needs to be a good executive car, obviously. Second one, it needs to have performance and fun, supposedly. And third, it needs to do all of the Toyota stuff, which means be reliable, be efficient, and so on. So number 1, is it a good luxury car? Well, the ride, I have to say, is excellent. Even over large bumps, it's super cushy and pillowy. Though I will say that the smaller amplitude, high frequency bumps, I still do feel as road texture. It isn't bad at all. It's just gentle communication from the car coming through. So I don't really mind it. It never feels overly wallowy as well. It is wafty, but it always feels controlled. In terms of noise, it's also really good. As you can hear, we're doing highway speeds and you can barely hear any wind whistle. There's a bit of exterior noise, but it's really damped out. Tire noise is also pretty isolated as well. Because we have double glazing all around, it is really quiet in here. And the sound system in here is also pretty good. I'm not sure what brand it is because I didn't do enough research on this car clearly, but it's got a lot of detail and power in the bass, mids, and trebles. And it sounds, I think, nearly as good as the Mark Levinson system in my Lexus GS, which is already an amazing system, especially for the price. What's not so fine is the powertrain, and I'm not just talking about the mechanical bits, but also the calibration, because something seems to be a little bit off here. Firstly, a luxury car must be effortless. It must be super easy to drive, and it also needs to be smooth so you don't cause any jerkiness in the ride for your passenger, because it is overall supposed to be a chauffeur car. That's what the Crown's role is as an executive vehicle. But it already kind of struggles in town driving. So, throttle calibration, I will say, is good. It is very linear, and it's really easy to modulate as well. The brakes, however, okay, it's a little complicated. The first bit of the brakes in Toyota hybrids is supposed to be regen, and that's actually really, really good. You can hardly tell it even activates before the friction brakes. The problem comes when you are near a complete stop, because, okay, you know when you're trying to drive smoothly and you want a smooth, jerkless limousine stop, right? Basically, in an automatic car, when you get close to a standstill, the torque converter, or in this case the E-motor, pulls you forward slowly. So you apply a bit more brake pressure to sort of balance out the force that pulls you forward, right? But with this, initially it feels like you're trying to balance against a consistent force, up until the very, very last moment before you come to a stop, where all of a sudden the amount of propulsive force forward increases ever so slightly. So compared to a normal like torque converter automatic car, like my Lexus GS for instance, it feels kinda unnatural. This happens to all Toyota hybrids, by the way. It's not just this. The Toyota Alphard hybrid I drove in my previous Japan trip, the AH40, the ES-300H hybrid that I drove a while back, it also did that. So I'm not sure. The calibration seems a little bit off for me. But apart from the braking, I have to talk about the engine here, because no longer do we get a V6 or a V8. Instead, we have Toyota's run-of-the-mill inline-4, which is shared with their commodity cars like the RAV4, the Camry, and so on. It's pretty much everything, which is great for reliability and parts availability, but it's not so great for a smooth experience because it's not like a luxury engine. It's not a V6 or a V8, so you don't get that smooth, like, butter-like power delivery of one of those higher cylinder count engines. So although the EV part does smooth a lot of it out, you still feel like the rattliness when the engine does come up. And of course, when you need more power because it doesn't have that much power, only 250 horsepower, well, it's not that isolated when you get to like 3,000 something RPM. It is quite loud. And it just doesn't sound like what a luxury car should be. I wish this did come with a V6 at the very least, because like many other Crowns had V6 or even V8 options for the Majestas. So I wish Toyota just gave us an option. But then, you have the hybrid system, and supposedly hybrids should be smooth, especially when they have the electric assist. You also have the ECVT that smooths all of the inputs out. But the problem is, this doesn't have just an ECVT. This has the 10-speed multi-stage hybrid thing. Normally an ECVT sounds like this. Just like every other CVT, it will hold the revs at a certain point, which is kind of unnatural, but it's smooth because it's consistent torque delivery. This doesn't do that because it has a 4-speed automatic combined with an ECVT, which means you have ever so slight jerking occurring at random intervals when you drive. So let's say I slow down in like to 30 or so and I accelerate. EV kicks in, which is really smooth, and then the engine kicks in, giving us more torque, and if you want more power, you have a bit of like jerking motion every time the transmission shifts, right? So it doesn't really feel that smooth, and it does sometimes like make your head bob a little. It's not that refined or smooth at all, actually. I guess I would like it more if Toyota didn't add the multi-stage hybrid thing, because supposedly they added it for fun and performance, which kind of goes against the fact that this is supposed to be a chauffeur car, so it's really confusing. But then again, if I were to examine it from a performance and fun standpoint, it doesn't really have either of those. So performance-wise, it's about 250 horsepower, 0 to 100 in about like mid 7-second range, which is fine, but it's not even close to what the previous Crown with a 3.5 liter multi-stage hybrid did, which was mid 4-second range. That was actually quick, especially for a sedan like that. And in terms of fun, I mean, okay, if I whack it in manual mode by pulling back on the gear shift and doing like this, yeah, there's a bit of delay and there's kind of a rev match, but like, the gears are just like unnaturally close together. It doesn't sound like a proper transmission. It doesn't let you rev it to the red line, and Toyota red lines do sound really good. The handling, even in Sport S Plus mode, there's a lot of body roll. It doesn't really feel communicative, not like my GS was, and it just feels heavy going around a corner. It's not really a car that I want to drive around a back road. Maybe I would if the engine sounded good, because the LC500, it is also like nearly as cushy as this, and it has a great engine and transmission. If this had one of those, then maybe I would consider doing that. But it doesn't have any redeeming factors in terms of performance and fun. Like, it's designed to be a chauffeur car. You don't really need the performance and fun part anyway. It just needs to be effortless. So it kind of falls short there. Very short. And now we move on to the last perspective, which is about efficiency, reliability, and all that. I will say, this gets amazing range. Seriously, amazing range, because this has the same fuel tank size as the LC500. It's 82 liters, which means with this smaller engine, it gets better fuel economy, which means the range is huge. 1,000 kilometers on one full tank. And in terms of fuel economy, it's not as good as I was thinking, because like in the 900 kilometers we've done, we've only averaged about like 14-ish kilometers per liter. That's around 7 liters per 100 kilometers.
which sounds pretty good until you realize that like an ES-300H with a pure ECVT, but the same engine, will do like 5 liters per 100 kilometers. And it is actually smoother because it doesn't have the weird like 10-speed transmission thing. So it is pretty good for efficiency, but it's not as good as I was expecting. In terms of reliability though, this is where it is kind of confusing, because Toyotas, the appeal of Toyotas is that they're quite common, which means even in something like a luxury Toyota, the parts are readily available. But this, the engine is fine, but this has the weird 10-speed thing that's only shared with 2 other cars. So you have the economical stuff for the engine, but then you have a transmission that is harder to find parts for. And it also makes things more complicated because instead of having an ECVT by itself, which is super reliable by the way, I'll link a video in the description if you want to learn more about it, because it has very few moving parts. There's no clutches, nothing to slip, there's no friction, it works very well. But now you have a 4-speed automatic, which I guess makes it more fun. But you add complexity and you reduce the reliability, or at least you add failure points for no reason, because no one is gonna want to use manual mode in here because the engine doesn't sound great and it doesn't handle that well around a twisty road. So that does leave this car in kind of a weird spot. From a luxury car and from a chauffeur car perspective, it doesn't, like, yes, the ride is great and the isolation is great, but like, there are better chauffeur cars out there. Like the Toyota Alphard exists. You get more space, more amenities, and the middle grade of the Alphard, which still has the captain's chairs in the back, it's like 1 million yen less than this thing. For performance and fun, like, it's not fun to bring it around a twisty road, even in Sport Plus. Engine doesn't sound good, transmission's a bit weird, feels unnatural, there's a lot of body roll, and it's not really that powerful or effortless, so doesn't really do that either. And for being a pure Toyota, you know, commuting, being reliable, being efficient and all that, well, an ES-300H has nearly the same amount of space. It's front-wheel drive, which means it's packaged better from a technical perspective. You have more interior room with less, like, actual car footprint. The rear seats also recline in an ES-300H, and it's a bit more economical too, and it also costs a little bit less than this. So, I guess what I'm saying is, for the 3 areas that we talked about just now, Toyota makes better cars in each category, and this is kind of just middling in every respect. Which is sad to say, because I know how good Crowns can be, but I'm sorry to say this, but I think the kingdom has fallen. Because this is not the Crown I remember. Even the other Crowns make a bit more sense than this. Being front-wheel drive, you get the advantages of better economy. The Crown crossover has more power and should be more fun with the 6-speed auto thing. The Crown Sport has the plug-in hybrid, so that means it's more versatile than this. And the Crown Wagon, it's got a big trunk. It's a huge trunk because it's a wagon. So, yeah, I am quite mad at Toyota for getting this thing so wrong, because this should be the best of them all. This is the last rear-drive, true luxury sedan that Toyota makes, aside from the Lexus stuff. And I think they really dropped the ball here. So Toyota, if you're listening, that does not mean I think you should end the rear-wheel drive Crown nameplate, because it's still important as a symbol. But just make it better. Don't half-ass it. Because unlike Crowns of old and the 4th generation GS, this just